Well, good morning. I must say this morning I need to begin with a confession. You know, whenever you see a new path, cement path being laid and the cement is still wet, I have this longing to pick up a stick and put my initials in the corner of the path. And I have to say a quick prayer and say, "Help me, Lord, help me." It's interesting that in thinking about the subject of prayer, which I want us to think about for a few moments this morning, that there's been a growing interest in prayer since the pandemic started. And research has shown that there have been more attempts to Google prayer and get information about it since the pandemic started. And as well as that, the 24/7 prayer resources have been sought, and there's been more interest there than there has been for years. I guess for most of us in our ordinary lives, we feel that we have things under control. But then those moments come when there's a kind of a dramatic change and we feel that we need help. We need help in the little things as well as the big things. And we may simply feel unwell, or we may be worried sick about our finances, our job, our superannuation, and so on. And we realise that we need some kind of help. And if we're going to pray about these things, we need to really believe that God cares for us and that He cares for us individually. We used to sing a chorus years ago that said something like this: "I know He cares for me. I know He cares for me. I'll trust my Father in heaven, for I know that He cares for me." Some of you would have heard of Corrie ten Boom. She came from the Netherlands, and during the Second World War, her family, all a Christian family, used to hide Jews in their home. And during the period of the Second World War, they hid about 800 Jews during that period. But eventually they were found out, and Corrie ten Boom and her sister Betsy were put into a concentration camp. And the rest of the family, I'm not sure of the details of what happened to the rest of the family, but here were Corrie and Betsy in this concentration camp where the conditions were not good. But they were able to smuggle in a Bible, and they held Bible studies, and they also held prayer meetings. And one day Corrie got a most dreadful cold, a heavy cold, and you imagine what it would be like having a cold without tissues or without a handkerchief. And so Betsy, her sister, prayed this simple prayer: "Lord, please give Corrie a handkerchief." Now, Corrie thought this was a bit of a crazy prayer, but just after that, one of the ladies in the camp came to Corrie and she said, "Look, I've got a gift for you. I have this handkerchief for you." And Corrie said, "How did you know that I needed a handkerchief?" And this lady said, "Look, I just sensed in my heart that I was to give this handkerchief to you." What does the chorus say? "I know He cares for me." Most of us pray simple help prayers. "Help me, Lord," or "Help my friend," or "Help my children," "Help my parents." And I must say, often I pray those kind of prayers because I don't know how to pray so often for people. And I say, "Lord, please help that person. Or I pray it for myself, Lord, please help me. It is something very natural in us, and that we naturally reach out to God for help. And when we come to pray, actually Peter Gregg says in his book How to Pray, he says 3 things: keep it simple, keep it real, and keep it up. So those 3 things. Keep it simple. Let's not complicate our prayers. Keep it simple. Keep it real, that is honest, really honest when we talk to God. And keep it up. The scripture that was listed on your plan was from Hebrews 4:16, or one of the verses. And this is an incredible verse that helps us when we come to pray. Let us then approach the throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. That's from the NIV. If we read the New Living Translation, it says, "So let us come boldly to the throne of our gracious God. There we will receive mercy and will find grace to help us when we need it most." This is such an incredible promise, and it helps us to understand the very heart of God, because it says, let us come boldly to the throne of grace. Grace. It doesn't say, it's not a throne of judgment or condemnation. It's a throne of grace. So we come to our gracious God, and our promise is to find mercy and grace to help us in our time of need. And many of us would be familiar with what it says in 1 Peter 5:7, cast all your cares on him, all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. So the question is, does God really care for us? This is possibly one of the hurdles that some Christians face. Does God really care for me, personally, individually? Remember what Corrie ten Boom, what happened to her? She had a cold and she got a handkerchief. And I want to share with you a personal experience that happened on the 3rd of June 2017 when my friend Joyce and I, we went on a bit of a cruise, and that day we arrived at Colombo in Sri Lanka. And months before, I'd made arrangements to meet up with Majors Peter and Tara McGuigan, because they were serving there, and I thought how lovely it would be to see them there in Sri Lanka. So we'd made arrangements, and when the boat berthed, and we got on the courtesy bus that took us to the passenger terminal because we'd berthed at another spot, we got out of the bus and we walked around this area and we couldn't find Peter and Tara. And I tell you, it was very hot and very humid. Anyway, eventually we went back to the boat because we couldn't find them, and we rang up Peter and he said, look, get off the bus, the courtesy bus at this particular spot, and we'll meet you there. So we did that, and we got off the bus and we walked and walked and walked, and do you think we could find Peter and Tara? No sign of them. Eventually Joyce said, look, there's a car park across the road, maybe they're there. So we bravely crossed the road and looked around the car park, no sign of them. I just sat down in the end because I couldn't walk a bit further. I was absolutely exhausted, too exhausted even to pray. And as we sat there, we saw these tuk-tuks coming in and out of the car park. Now, a tuk-tuk is like a three-wheeler vehicle, I suppose you'd call it a vehicle, and 2 people can sit in the back behind the driver, and they're just everywhere in Colombo. There's 10,000 of them, in fact, in Colombo. And as I sat there, looking at these tuk-tuks coming in and out, I suddenly saw one that had a Salvation Army shield on it. I didn't realise Joyce, as she'd been walking around, been praying, Lord, help us, please. We need to find Peter and Tara. Please help us. And in came this tuk-tuk with a Salvation Army shield. I went over to the driver of it and I said, do you know Major Peter McGuigan? Yes, yes, he said. Anyway, he got his mobile out, he phoned Peter, found out where they were, and then he took us to the spot where they were, and were able to meet up. Now that was really a miracle, because let me tell you that of the 10,000 tuk-tuks in Colombo, 2 are owned by the Salvation Army. We just gave thanks to God for the miracle that day. What did we say about that chorus? I know He cares for me. Corrie ten Boom used to say, there's nothing too great for God's power and nothing too small for God's love. And that verse from Hebrews says, let us then approach the throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. And I'll just remind you then of that chorus again. I know He cares for me. I know He cares for me. So I'll trust my Father in heaven, for I know that He cares